Well, we're joined now by Amnesty International South Africa spokesperson Genevieve Quintal. Genevieve, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Amnesty is calling for the intervention of the global community when it comes to this escalation of conflict. Why are you calling for intervention, and what kind of intervention really do you have in mind?
Good evening, Kathy, and thank you so much for having me. What we're saying is that the international community needs to now put pressure on both sides to stop the violence and the attacks and to stop the escalation of those attacks. At the end of the day, it's civilians that are really the hardest hits during this conflict. And if you are targeting civilians during events like this, that amounts to war crime. So as much as, it's the pressure that needs to come from the international community to say stop it from both sides, from Israel and from the Gaza side.
You're correct in saying that, both sides have lost civilians, and we're continuing to see, the impact that is having on the lives of ordinary people. But when we look at it from an international point of view, Genevieve, tensions are incredibly high at this point, and what we're seeing are different parts of the world coming out to actually say who they support, where their traditional histories of allyship, that's only increasing as the conflict escalates. How do we try and sort of break that? Do you think it's even possible to do that in this moment?
We need to call on the international community and everyone to look at this through a humanitarian lens. We are deeply alarmed by the mounting civilian death toll in Gaza, in Israel, and the occupied West Bank. And that's why we're urgently calling on parties in the conflict to abide by international law and to make every effort to avoid further civilian bloodshed. And so the international community needs to do the same. I repeat, under international humanitarian law, all sides in a conflict have a clear obligation to protect the lives of civilians caught up in the hostilities. And deliberately targeting civilians while carrying out disproportionate attacks goes against, it amounts to war crimes. We know that Israel has a horrific track record of committing war crimes with impunity in previous wars on Gaza. But the Palestinian armed groups from Gaza must also refrain from targeting civilians and using indiscriminate weapons. Even the abduction of civilians and hostage taking is prohibited by international law, and this also constitutes war crimes. And all civilians who are being held hostage need to be released immediately, unconditionally, and unharmed. And that's one of the things we're calling for. But Kathy, I think what's also important to understand here is that the root causes of these repeated cycles of violence also need to be addressed, and as a matter of urgency. This requires the upholding of international law, which I've spoken a lot about, and ending Israel's 16-year-long illegal blockade on Gaza. And there's all other aspects of Israel's system of apartheid, which is imposed on all Palestinians. That is the root cause of this, and that's actually what needs to be addressed. Whether we're there yet, I don't know, but at this stage, our most recent call is please, we need to stop the escalation of violence, and we need to stop the violence and the attacks.
When you think about which bodies really should be tasked with this, or even countries that you believe might be able to lead a conversation that can lead to breakthrough, does Amnesty have any ideas on who that should be?
We haven't looked, Kathy, we don't get involved in the politics of these situations. Our main focus is, international human rights law and human rights of people who are being affected. Look, we know that in 2021, the International Criminal Court opened an investigation into the situation in the state of Palestine. Its mandate includes crimes under international law committed by all parties in the current fighting, as well as crime against humanity of apartheid against Palestinians. So we need international justice to play its role as well. We also understand that there have been failures of international justice. I think we've spoken before about the inconsistencies in the ICC, but really, who should be involved? I'm not the one to say, and Amnesty International is not the one to say, but whoever can needs to come to the table and help I don't know, putting it into this seems like such a fickle thing to say, but at least start a process where we one day might see peace.
All right. Amnesty International South Africa spokesperson Genevieve Quintal, thanks for that, calling for global intervention to stop the conflict on both sides.